Timo, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ben.
Really excited to unpack your journey and talk about some really important and big topics at the moment. So looking forward to hearing more about you. You may have listened to a couple of the episodes in the past. I always like to kind of go back in time and look at a bit about your background and how you found your way into the ecosystem. So for the benefit of anyone that doesn't know you and your journey so far, can you tell us a bit about that and how that's kind of played out?
It's a weird mishmash, honestly, and I think I'm not the only one in the Salesforce ecosystem who has sort of accidentally crashed into the ecosystem. I wouldn't say that it was sort of my intention to end up as a Salesforce architect originally, but so far it's been or it's proven to be very fruitful, exciting. You learn new stuff every week, every day. You meet awesome people. So couldn't be happier. But my background in a nutshell, I studied marketing in a business school in the university, went into the world of finance, working with legacy systems. And there I saw basically how not to set up your customer databases. I think I worked with roughly 10 CRM systems in quotes. And that sort of got me thinking that there must be a better way of doing this. And then I ended up in a marketing agency where I focused on marketing automation and CDPs and CRMs. And then I was headhunted into a Salesforce specific boutique consultancy. And from there, I wanted to see the world a bit more. So I joined Capgemini 3 years ago to work as a Salesforce architect in the Nordics. And that's my journey.
Yeah, and you obviously unpacked that a bit there in terms of not coming from your typical coding or IT background. I think you have a master's in marketing, and I think doing some research about you'd kind of quoted yourself as being an accidental architect, which I know I've heard of the accidental admin before, but the accidental architect is a new one for me. So at what point did you go, you know what, I actually think I can become an architect? I think, I'm evolving into this space, and what kind of steps did you take to going from being like a marketing automation specialist to now being an architect within a global SI?
I have to admit, I still suffer very much from an imposter syndrome. When I look at the mirror, I cannot, honestly say that I consider myself a full-fledged architect. Maybe it's a bit of self-deprecation that I call myself an accidental architect. I have been chewed on for saying that by my architect colleagues, and they say, like, be proud of it, own it, and I try to do that more and more every day. And I think, honestly, it's a good thing that in the Salesforce ecosystem, we have a variety of architects as well. I know there's accidental admins, there's admins who have had that trajectory in their career for a longer time, so who are not accidental ones. So we have a variety in the ecosystem. I think that's a good thing. And I have tried to make it actually into my strength that I don't come from a coding or IT background, but have this like deeply rooted business domain understanding of marketing and sales. And I've been trying to focus on that while also sort of wetting my nose on learning Apex, Basics, and LWC. No, but don't put me on, doing code validation or quality assurance on code-based solutions, because I wouldn't be able to do that. But I think it's good that as an architect, you have a sort of general level understanding of the entire toolbox, which includes coding-based solutions, but you should definitely also have some sort of a niche or focus. So I'm very much an advocate for this kind of T-shaped professional, so to speak.
Yeah, nice. I think having that hunger to keep learning, I think identifying you yourself, say you're not the finished article, right? You say you have that imposter syndrome, perhaps sometimes of positioning yourself as that architect, but I guess that just gives you the drive to keep learning and keep expanding your knowledge as well. So
exactly. Keeps you hungry.
100%, yeah. Now, obviously, like I said, I did a fair bit of research prior to planning the questions. And one of the places I was able to do that was Salesforce Ben, because you've been writing and creating content with them for years. And what has that done for you and your career in terms of putting yourself out there and being seen and heard?
I mean, it's done lots. I would credit Salesforce Ben for many things, including my current position at Capgemini even. For sure, I wouldn't have been selected to work here if I hadn't written for Salesforce Ben. And I mean, it's not only sort of putting out pieces and getting attention or visibility. That's one element, but I think what it has done for me and what it continues to do is that when I write stuff, which I write mostly from selfish point of view, that I find a topic interesting, I want to learn more about it. So I study and I write and I refine my thinking while I write. So it's part of my learning process to write articles for Salesforce Ben. So, I mean, it's been a great sort of vehicle for this learning, I think.
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it. I think a lot of people want to create content these days to be seen and heard, but actually there's a bigger piece to it, and that's to continue learning, right? And to, like, you wouldn't want to put something out that didn't make sense. So you have to do your research and make sure you're well read on those topics before you put it to I guess pen to paper.
Yeah, and I mean, if I could give one advice to anybody who's writing content or creating content for video or any sort of medium, I think is that don't think too much about how many readers or viewers you have. Don't look at the numbers too closely, because if that is your driver, and I mean, I've written fair amount of articles for Salesforce Ben, and honestly, some of them less good than others. So some of my content I write on LinkedIn, for example, I look back and I think it's rubbish. So so, I mean, if you sort of feel discouraged because of the lack of numbers, then I mean that shouldn't be your only driver. And for me, it's to keep on learning. And as long as I feel that writing gives me something where I can, or a place where I can put my thoughts to order and gather my thoughts and learn new things, I think that's going to be part of my professional life for at least the foreseeable future.
Yeah, nice. And you presented, I think it was Dreamforce 2023 on data cloud and marketing data strategy. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, the market's moved on a lot over the last couple of years in terms of technology and skills and what's in demand and whatnot. But just if we focus in on data cloud, how have you seen that evolve since that presentation? And what's your current stance on the product and I guess more around adoption and how the product is being received in the market?
Yeah, I mean, I remember I was in the audience when they had the main keynote in Dreamforce 2023, and I think Mark Benioff was shouting about that data cloud is a data lake house and it's no longer a CDP. And I was sort of laughing that, well, it is really a CDP. It's just a fancy way of pointing out that it is a customer data platform. Of course, now it's easy to say that, okay, that was a forward-looking statement, because back then it was still very much marketing focused and didn't have all the shiny tools that it has now, and that kind of like engine powering semantic search and data enrichment for sales and service and commerce and whatnot. So it's evolved into a full-fledged sort of data activation layer from merely a customer data platform. It's fair to say that it's not the same product, not the same platform that it was back then in 2023. It's changed quite a lot since.
An evolution for the better in terms of how it's being received now?
It depends on who you ask,
Mhm.
I think. For my sort of core audience or target group of marketers and architects, I think it's sort of a mixed bag, to be honest. From a purely CDP, marketing CDP standpoint, there's a lot of good there, but there's a lot of tooling that's not necessarily relevant and certain performance issues that you don't see, for example, with other non-Salesforce CDPs that are completely focused on the marketing or commerce use cases. And that's, a natural consequence that you get when you try to tackle so many roles that Data Cloud or Data 360 is tackling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. Now, obviously, a big thing that you've been working on, I guess, for a period of time is the book that you released, A Complete Guide to Agentforce. You mentioned before about not thinking too much about who you're writing for and worrying too much about who's reading it, more like the learning experience. But I guess you must have had an audience in mind for that. Was that written for the Salesforce professional, or was it a customer that you had in mind in terms of how to get the most out of the platform? And what was it that made you want to go down that path?
Well, I mean, I did have this kind of, I think, misguided idea that I might become a book author at some point. Like, I'm writing all these articles, why not just make it into between two hardcovers and write a full book? That was my thought, but I never sort of took the first steps towards that. And basically, I got a message from a publisher, and it took from there. I had that kind of seed planted in my head, and then it started growing once I actually started realizing, hey, this could actually happen.
Yeah.
But regarding the sort of audience, I wanted to take this kind of like practitioner perspective, because I think that was missing at the time, and I think that's sort of still missing. My book is right about to come out, and I'm hoping that it will reach its audience. But yeah, it's mostly like anybody who considers themselves an Agentforce practitioner. So not necessarily, let's say, a Salesforce client. Could be, let's say, an in-house team who is working on Agentforce.
Mm-hmm.
But mostly I would say either somebody who's working at the mothership, Salesforce, who is solutioning Agentforce, consulting on it for professional services, for example, or a Salesforce developer, architect, BA, admin, who is doing a project on Agentforce. So it's very much this kind of handbook, how to run Agentforce as a sort of a project, as a sort of initiative, rather than like a technical guide to the actual platform itself. It has elements of that as well, like the building blocks of an agent, but I've tried to keep it as practical, offering best practice advice. I've done interviews with top professionals in the field across the globe and added those insights into the book, and all sorts of architectural diagrams and reference designs that users can or readers can use. And there's also like charts and tables that you can reference for, let's say, how to measure project success when doing Agentforce projects. These sort of like practical issues that every team comes across, but has to learn by themselves if they don't have that experience beforehand.
Yeah,
so
nice.
I tried to put it in. Right. Yeah.
Awesome.
Sorry.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Long answer.
No, that's great. Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was going to be more. Yeah, it's 'cause there's so few people that have done any work in this space, right? That's the thing for us, especially in my local market in Australia. There's so few success stories yet that this is key, right? Because there's nowhere else really to look for that advice and guidance as you're going through a program. And I know you're the Agentforce lead architect in the Nordics for Capgemini, and also have been involved in, I think it was the global Agentforce bootcamp for marketeers in 2025.
Yeah.
So from that vantage point, how would you summarize or explain what Agentforce is now, how it works, and maybe some of the best use cases that you've seen? Because there's probably people out there that are hearing a lot about it, because obviously it's the buzzword now, right? Everyone's pushing it. People are trying to sell it. People are being told it will solve all their problems. But in that kind of elevator pitch style thing, like what is it? What are you seeing it being used well for?
I have started looking at it more of as a tool rather than a platform or a separate product. So if you aren't new to the Salesforce ecosystem, so if you've worked here for a few years, I think it's helpful to view it as a tool like Flow or Apex or LWC. It handles certain tasks, and there are certain areas where it overlaps with these kind of deterministic automations. So we call them like rule-based automations. They're deterministic because you have certain inputs, you have certain actions, and then you get outputs. And it follows a sort of repeatable pattern. And agentic AI, by definition, is, I would say, semi-deterministic only, because there are certain elements that are related to large language models that cause it to, improvise. And, you don't always get what you expect. And that's part of the fun in working with Agentforce. And I think viewing it as a tool that you can use and identifying when it makes sense to use agentic AI. I think that is the key thing. And then sort of adding a bit of that kind of agentic, semi-deterministic adaptability into, processes is a huge benefit for every Salesforce professional. But yeah, I don't know if I answered everything.
Yeah, I guess the one area we didn't touch on there was, what have you seen it being used well for then in terms of use cases, like maybe not customer names or anything like that, but actually if you were to point at success right now for what you can get out of Agentforce as a tool, then what would you say was useful?
I've been talking about this a lot, both with our customers and other partners and then with Salesforce. And so far I'm seeing actually that the sort of what I call like headless, some people call them like invisible agents or background agents, whatever you want to call them, but non-conversational Agentforce agents. So agents that a user doesn't chat with, basically. Those are the best use cases so far that I've seen. And I have a whole subsection on my book basically dedicated to these kind of headless use cases. And I really, really enjoy them. So it's the idea that you embed agentic reasoning inside a process. And instead of having, let's say, a flow run with certain pre-written rules and determining the outcomes, you have an agent that evaluates criteria, evaluates inputs that can, come from an API or a flow or a screen flow or let's say like an Apex trigger, and then pass that information to an agent, and the agent then can validate it, qualify it, and then act upon it. And it happens in the background. User doesn't interact with it. It has a very limited scope. It has, built-in monitoring that you set up, and then it works in the background. I think these kind of like very limited, very tightly scoped headless use cases, those are the sweet spot for Agentforce for me at the moment.
And I guess at the moment is the key thing, right? That hopefully is going to evolve.
Yeah, that might change like in 6 months, or it might be a different answer. But this has been at least my view for the last, I would say, 6 to 9 months, and it hasn't so far changed. So just wondering why Salesforce hasn't been so loud about this kind of headless use of Agentforce. They just went out with headless CRM, but that's a completely different topic than headless agents.
Mm-hmm. Part of writing and podcasts and things like that is that information can be found online in the future, right? And I saw an article I think you'd written about, you'd commented that Agentforce is an existential battle for Salesforce. So what did you mean by that at time of writing? And do you think that Salesforce is winning that battle at the moment?
Yeah, that was like, I think a year ago or something. I think there's a bit of time since I wrote that, and I think it still applies, but the landscape has shifted a bit. For example, the playing field has sort of realigned itself a bit. Back a year ago, I think 2025, we sort of saw OpenAI as the incumbent market leader, and it felt almost untouchable with ChatGPT and everything. And then by then we've seen that there's been huge developments to the other direction, Anthropic sort of taking that role as an incumbent leader in many areas. And the idea that doing less is actually more. So rather than, doing images and videos and whatnot, the strategy that's been winning so far is focusing on coding and written content, for example, for Anthropic. And so far, I think it's still very much an open playing field. And I don't have the answer if Salesforce is winning the battle, but it certainly hasn't lost it yet. So Salesforce is very much still in the race. There are tools that work really nicely with Salesforce already. Tools like, for example, Mesh and Claude Code. If you use it with VS Code, you can do really cool stuff in the agent-driven development side. But that's, again, a different story from agents that you build with Agentforce. So there's so many different sides to agentic AI. And, it's not one battle, I would say. There are smaller battles in that agentic space. And Salesforce is clearly trying to find its way to the right battles. It has the best chances of winning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, when you release the book, you're going to go, I would imagine a lot of people reaching out to you that are interested in exploring becoming a specialist in the Agentforce space. So actually getting hands-on with the tool. What's going to be your advice for people that want to get hands-on? Like, is it to go and do the certs? Is it Trailhead now? Like, where can people actually start learning to be an Agentforce practitioner?
I think it's not only, Agentforce. If you're starting out in Salesforce space, I mean, the sort of basic building blocks, like getting, Salesforce admin and platform developer one, these certifications, these foundational ones, they still have a clear function, and they are probably even, I would say, even more crucial with agentic AI than in the past. So you shouldn't disregard that kind of basic foundational knowledge on low code and programmatic development and architecture. But it's tough because it's starting to feel like that you have to be actually a master in many areas. I don't have a clear answer for new entrants in the space because I sort of just feel for you because there is quite a lot to learn, and it's an uphill battle. But then I think Salesforce has tried its best to make it as accessible as possible. So going the basic paths of doing the trailhead sort of journeys and etc. That's a great start, but really building your own agents inside a developer edition or a demo environment, that's a great way. And there's no substitute for real life experience. But as you pointed out, there aren't that many real life sort of production aiming projects out there. And that's I guess a big part of the challenge, that people are eager to get started, but companies are a bit hesitant to actually go beyond POCs and these kind of early stage demos still in 2026.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. That's definitely what we're seeing as well here. What about then? You've mentioned obviously like there's a broad battle, so it's not like I don't think it's wise just for someone to come in and focus on Agentforce's like AI. This is what I'm learning, right? I think, like you said, you need to be aware of all of these other offerings out there and the different use cases that each one can kind of be used for. How do you assess that? Like, how do you keep more broadly outside of Salesforce? How do you keep your eye on what else is out there in the world of AI? You know, when Claude started becoming a bit more prominent than ChatGPT, how were you an early adopter of that, I guess, in terms of understanding what's coming?
I mean, I find that LinkedIn, at least for me, is a wealth of knowledge. I think that there's people in the sort of environment or in the ecosystem who share actively insights on the space. I think people like Pablo Gonzalez and who else? Terrible with names. So just trying to think about, like, there's tons of people who share a lot of like interesting takes. Beachhorn, for example, Matt Piper, is a very sort of loud speaker, not always in the sort of positive or sharing a positive angle of Salesforce, but he speaks from the heart. And I think that is really nice to see that we see these kind of authentic voices sharing their insights in LinkedIn. And I think listening to these like authentic voices in LinkedIn, picking up information and insights that they share, so you don't have to, reinvent the wheel. That's been really helpful for me, because I also have a limited number of hours in the day, so I cannot, spend my whole like free time learning all these new tools. So I have to also prioritize, and sometimes that means that I don't, for example, try all the new Claude versions or set up everything myself, but like look at videos that some other people have done and what they've been testing and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do. I must admit, I do like Matt's content. I think it's always, whenever I see his name pop up on my feed, it's always one I look out for, because it definitely it's not always just good to see the positive stuff, right? It's also good to get other insights. And the thing about, like, so I have a friend that's been working on Manus as a platform. I'd never even heard of that
Yeah.
before, and that's then I'm playing around with it, and that's now owned by Meta. Like, there's so many out there, right? There's so many different tools, so many different use cases, so many things. Like, it is like drinking from a fire hose. So actually, yeah, looking at people that are summarizing some of these things is probably the best way to go about it. Now, I speak to a lot of, as you'd probably imagine, as a recruiter in this space, I speak to a lot of different people. I get a lot of different opinions on where the market's going. Some good, some
Yeah.
bad. Some people fear for Salesforce. Some people agree with the whole SaaSpocalypse thing. Where do you see the platform going from here, and how confident are you that the roadmap and vision will keep it kind of on the trajectory that it has been on for many years?
The biggest challenge is that the velocity keeps sort of accelerating, and like it seems to be the direction seems to be shifting faster than it used to. And that's, again, both a good and a bad thing. It means that Salesforce is reacting quickly to changes in the market space and trying to keep itself up to date and sort of relevant in the sort of sphere of things. But that's both led to the kind of a disillusionment of many users, like who still think like Salesforce is a CRM. So what about us who don't want to go into agentic yet, or who are using different agentic AI, or who don't have the data readiness for agentic? We just want to get a good CRM. What about us? So you see this kind of disillusionment happening. And then you also see certain features in products like Data 360 that seem sort of halfway finished, because Salesforce has introduced them and maybe run a few updates on them, but sort of lost interest in certain features. They are still there. They're still sort of advertised and provided to users. But if I have to name something, for example, calculated insights, the editor, both the SQL-based editor and the visual one, they could use a serious overhaul by now. Honestly, Salesforce. So please address that if you can. And just as an example, and that's natural for a product organization. You have to focus on, being relevant in the big picture, and that sometimes means that these kind of more, let's say, side features, they sort of don't get that kind of focus. And that's also what you see happening across the Salesforce space at the moment, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Are you still confident? Are you still, like you said at the beginning, it's been a fruitful career in terms of sticking your flag in the ground with Salesforce. Is that a direction you're still expecting to be fruitful over the coming years?
I think it's sort of like getting a tattoo. I don't think that I can properly remove it by now. I think I sort of have this blue cloud icon on my forehead. So you reap what you sow. And once you sort of find yourself more focused on certain technology stack, I don't think that it's ever too late to pivot and switch careers if it comes to that. But so far, I haven't really felt the need to become more agnostic. I don't consider myself a pureblood Salesforce person. I am not a Salesforce employee. I write about Salesforce. I work closely with Salesforce, and I love working with the personnel at Salesforce, but I don't tie myself to that company like only to Salesforce. That's what I mean.
Yeah, makes sense.
But I mean, it is what it is, and I see that the ecosystem is in a tough spot. There are, I mean, layoffs almost every month, if not every week, across the tech sphere. The Salesforce ecosystem, it's not an easy market. It's not an easy time to be Salesforce professional. But I sort of believe in the idea that if you can make it during the tougher times, then that prepares you for the times that maybe are not as lean. There's going to be more growth and etc. So hopefully, I'm an optimist. So I'm looking to the future with optimism, and hopefully we can move past the tougher times that we are currently experiencing.
For sure, I think we'll all agree with that. So if anyone wants to reach out and pick your brains, ask any questions about you, the book, the experience you have, where's the best place to find you?
I think LinkedIn. I'm always like, if you drop me a DM in LinkedIn, I will at least read it and respond to you. I mean, I might not always have an answer for you directly, but generally I will connect with anybody who's willing to drop me a message and pick my brain, and always happy to help out.
Awesome.
So
thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for reaching out and giving this opportunity.